Hi everyone. So following on from the 3 C's of weapon defense, right, which is clear the body, control the weapon, counterattack, and having looked at the 5 different types of weapons that we may have to defend against or use, right? So blunt, edged, projectile, flexible, and combination weapons, right? Let's talk about how that impacts us in terms of range and the urgency, perhaps, of having to do something. So if we start looking at knives first, or edged weapons first, but in terms of the environment that most of you guys are training, which is here in Western Australia, probably knives, right? So if that's the case, I've got really 2 options. I want to be all the way out, in other words, in a position where the person can't get to me without weapon, ideally a few blocks away, but if not, far enough that they can't stab, slash, so on and so forth, and hit me with it. Or if I have to engage, what I don't want to do is stay in that kind of like almost boxing or sparring range where they can slash, but it's going to be very hard for me to control the weapon or control the arm. So remember the 3 C's: clear the body and then control the weapon or control the arm. A knife can only really do damage while it is moving, so I got to be able to be close enough to stop it from moving. So all the way out or all the way in, right? With blunt weapons, let's say a bat, which is probably the most typical one that we'll see here in Western Australia, right? Same principle applies, right? All the way out or all the way in, except a couple of things change, right? If we're looking at a bat, right, it's quite a long weapon. That means if I'm going to close that distance to be able to control the arm, I have to cover more distance quickly, right? So there is greater risk maybe coming in if somebody's taking a swing because they have more reach. On the other side of that, once we get inside and we can control the weapon, the risk is actually lower because a blunt object has to generate force to, generate speed in order to do damage, right? If I'm controlling the weapon and I'm very close, then hopefully they can't hit me hard enough to do any real damage, right? So both with knife and stick, we have to be all the way out or all the way in, but the risks are slightly different in terms of how we close the distance and the level of risk once we have closed that distance. Firearms are kind of the other exception to that. They're slightly different, right? Because distance is actually not my friend. If the person can see me, they can still shoot me without me being able to reach them. So ideally, the closer we are, if the weapon is touching you, that's kind of the best position where you can kind of maybe grab, move this, and again, clear the body, control the weapon, counterattack. With the disclaimer that doing that is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly dangerous. And the only time you should try and do, well, any of this stuff is really when you have no other choice. Okay, so keep these things in mind.